begin, I forgot this. Before we begin, after the show, on Facebook, go like and follow Kids Rock With You and the BarRoom Project, and then head over to YouTube and like and subscribe to Kids Rock With You and the BarRoom Project. Got to get those subscriptions and likes up, so please do that. So I showed you a little picture of the woman I was going to talk about today. It's this lady right here, and for those of you who don't know, she was a model in the 1960s, early 60s, mid-60s, and she's known for her blue eyes and her long blonde hair. This lady is named Pattie Boyd, and she had relationships with 3 famous British rock stars, 2 of which she was married to. She was a model. She was hired in 1964 to play a schoolgirl in the Beatles movie Hard Day's Night. While she was there, she met this one guy named George Harrison. Started dating him. Eventually they got married. And like all 60s relationships, it didn't really last. I don't know about all 60s relationships that didn't really last. But eventually, after she and George, their relationship ended, she had a relationship with Eric Clapton, and also at one point in time she had a relationship with Ronnie Wood, who was at that time in the Faces. He later joined the Rolling Stones. All 3 of those musicians wrote songs about her, and so I'm going to discuss 10 songs that were influenced by Pattie Boyd. So as we begin, there she is in the movie, a scene from the Hard Day's Night with Paul McCartney, and this is a picture of Pattie Boyd and Eric Clapton on their wedding day. So, let's begin. The first song, I was originally going to put these songs in chronological order. They're sort of in chronological order, but then I changed them around because I didn't want to end it on a depressing song. So, we'll start with I Need You by the Beatles. And this is George Harrison's contribution to the movie Help. And if you watch the movie Help, this is the scene where they record I Need You, and it's in this plane. They're surrounded by, part of the movie, they're under threat and they're being protected by the army. So this big plane recording this song with tanks surrounding them. And this song was written about a time, Pattie and George had been dating for a while, and they had a little bit of a mini breakup, and so George wrote a song about it. And Pattie said that she left George at this time because it was hard being the girlfriend of a Beatle and all the women that were chasing after the Beatles. There was so much pressure to be with the Beatles, and she didn't think she could handle it. So she left George, and at that time George wrote the song I Need You about that breakup. If you just hear some of the lyrics to that. But when you told me you don't want my loving anymore, that's when it hurt me. And a feeling like this, I just can't go on anymore. Please remember how I feel about you. I could never live without you. So come on back and see just what you mean to me. I need you. And shortly after that song was written, Pattie followed George's advice. I guess I'm being too loud for those out there. Shortly after that, Pattie followed George's advice in that song and did come back to George. And shortly thereafter, they were married. And Paul McCartney, by the way, was the best man at their wedding. The next another Beatles song that was written about Pattie Boyd Harrison at that point is Something. George began writing it during the Let It Be sessions, but it didn't appear on a Beatles album until Abbey Road a year later. And George actually got the idea for the song, and it was about Pattie, but the opening line, James Taylor had a song called Something in the Way She Moves, and George took that line and has it for the opening line to Something in the Way She Moves, attracts me like no other lover. And he wrote the song about his feelings for Pattie at the time. It was actually the first George Harrison song to be released as the A-side of a single, and it made it all the way to #1 in both the US and Britain. John Lennon said that Something was his favorite song on the Abbey Road album. And later even Frank Sinatra said it was his favorite. Frank Sinatra said this, he said it's the greatest love song ever written. So that's a pretty big praise. The Beatles actually made an early video for the song Something. In that video, there's Pattie and George, John and Yoko, Ringo Starr's wife Maureen, and Paul and Linda, being couples together. And one of the lines, as you probably know from the song Something, says something in the smile she knows, and in the video for the song Something, when they say that line, something in her smile she knows, Pattie Boyd just has a big, huge smile on her face. So it's really beautiful the way they did that. So another Beatles song that George wrote about Pattie was on the Let It Be album. It's called For You Blue. And remember, Pattie had these big blue eyes. So a lot of the times when you see songs by George Harrison or Eric Clapton mention blue, it's about Pattie. This is actually one of two songs that George wrote on the Let It Be album, For You Blue and I Me Mine. It's basically, George Harrison, when I was doing research for this, he described For You Blue as a 12-bar blues song, but with happy lyrics instead of sad, depressing lyrics. So the title refers to Pattie's blue eyes, and the lyrics are all about her. So the lyrics, something like, I loved you from the moment I saw you. You looked at me, that's all you had to do. And basically George later said that he fell in love with Pattie Harrison the first day he met her. So that's definitely about them. John Lennon on this song plays a lap steel guitar, and you hear George Harrison when they're playing the song, when you hear the song on the radio, on Spotify, listen to it on the record, you'll hear George Harrison say, "Go, Johnny, go," during the solo. And that's really John playing steel lap guitar. A little side note is after, we all know that George Harrison passed away in 2001. A year later, George Harrison's new wife, Olivia Harrison, organized a tribute concert, and Paul McCartney at the tribute concert played For You Blue, which is a kind of special thing that I think. Next up, we'll move away from George Harrison and the Beatles, and we'll go to Eric Clapton. Layla. I got my Layla shirt on for this. George Harrison and Eric Clapton became best friends, and Eric Clapton immediately fell for Pattie Boyd Harrison. He said he saw George Harrison and Pattie as King Arthur and Guinevere with his perfect life, and he wanted that perfect life, and he said he started to feel like Lancelot. And he's madly in love with her, tried to convince her to leave George for him. And strangely enough, it didn't ruin George's and Eric's friendship, that they both wanted the same woman. But anyway, Eric Clapton, when Cream disbanded, when Blind Faith disbanded, he formed a band called Derek and the Dominoes. And they recorded an album called Layla and Other Sort of Love Songs. And almost every song on that album is Eric Clapton trying to get Pattie Boyd Harrison to fall in love with him. The song Layla itself, it's based on an Indian poem. I hope I can pronounce this right, called The Story of Layla and Mohun. It's a song about this Indian prince and his unrequited love for a princess. And you all know the lyrics to this song, Layla, you've got me on my knees. Layla, I'm begging, darling, please. Layla, darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Let's make the best of the situation before I finally go insane. Please don't say you'll never find a way and tell me all my love's in vain. It's basically, Layla is Pattie Boyd Harrison, and he's trying to get her at his best to say how much he loves her. And a lot of people think, when you hear the song, a lot of people think that all that guitar playing is Eric Clapton. He did begin the opening chord, that famous opening riff is Eric Clapton, but most of the guitar playing on Layla is by Duane Allman. Duane Allman and the Allman Brothers and Eric Clapton, they shared the same producer, Tom Dode, and so when they got together, Tom Dode introduced Clapton to Duane Allman, and Clapton's like, you want to play slide guitar in this song? Duane's like, sure. So the ending coda with the piano and the slide guitar is all Duane Allman. Another song from Layla and the Other Sort of Love Song is called Bell Bottom Blues. And once again, remember Blue Eyes, Pattie Harrison's Blue Eyes. But the story behind this song is that Eric Clapton was going to America to go on tour, and Pattie Boyd asked Eric to buy her a pair of bell-bottom jeans because they were popular in the States at that time, but they hadn't made it to Britain. And of course, he saw that as some sort of, oh, she really wants me because she asked me to buy her stuff. And he wrote a song called Bell Bottom Blues about it, about how much he was in love with her. Bell Bottom Blues, you made me cry. I don't want to lose this feeling. And if I could choose a place to die, it would be in your arms. So that, another song, and most of the rest of Layla and Other Sort of Love Songs is also about Pattie Harrison. But I a show on that album just yet. Maybe I'll do something. Okay, now we're going to move on to Ronnie Wood of the Rolling Stones. In the mid-70s, George Harrison and Pattie Boyd were having some marital troubles. They had a whole bunch of issues. Primarily, they wanted to have kids, and she couldn't conceive, and George Harrison didn't want to adopt a kid, and it was a whole big mess. And she began an affair with Ronnie Wood, who was in the band The Faces at the time, and later he joined the Rolling Stones. And of course, what does he do? He comes out with a solo album called I've Got an Album of My Own to Do, 1974, and one of the songs on it was called Mystify Me. And I hadn't really heard about this until I started doing research for this Kiss Rock review. But the song is Mystify Me. It's about their relationship, and lyrics are, you look so fine and true, no one mystifies me like you do. Let me see you, let me know your dreams. Won't you please give me a call? Things you say make me look right through you. And on his very next solo album, Ron Wood had another song called Breathe on Me, which is about after they broke up, after she was still deciding between Eric Clapton and George Harrison. But she stopped seeing Ronnie Wood, and he really didn't want the relationship to end, so he wrote this song called Breathe on Me. Won't you come and see me sometime? Now that we've laid it on the line, linger a while on the truth, linger a while on the lies. Won't you come and see me in my dreams? That's the only way it seems we see. So sad, isn't it? Speaking of being sad, the next song is called So Sad by George Harrison from his album Dark Horse. Pattie and George Harrison did finally break up. Their differences were just too great, I guess. I wasn't around back then. I wasn't in England. The differences were just too much to get through, so they finally split up. And on the Dark Horse album by George Harrison, he wrote a song called So Sad, which was him feeling lonely after Pattie left. And we all know George Harrison with the Beatles, he wrote a song called Here Comes the Sun, and that's about how the sun breaks through and ends the winter. The lyrics for this song, So Sad, are just the opposite. The winter comes, and the sun goes away. All because he's lonely. It's actually written in third person, not written in first person. Not having Pattie with him anymore. So they go, now the winter's come to eclipse out the sun that has lighted my love for some time, and cold winds always blow. Not much tenderness flows from the heart of someone feeling so tired, and he feels so alone with no one of his own. So sad. It makes you feel sorry for George Harrison. But he rebounded, don't worry. And after she left George Harrison, she did actually move in with Clapton and eventually married Eric Clapton. And they had a tumultuous relationship fueled with, Eric Clapton had an alcohol problem, Pattie Harrison had an alcohol problem. So, they were happy at first, and then it sort of disintegrated, plus she sort of has always said that she was always still in love with George Harrison, and she was married Eric Clapton, so it didn't actually work out. They actually got divorced in the mid-'80s. They separated in the mid-'80s. They got divorced in the late 80s. But in '85, Eric Clapton was working on an album called Behind the Sun, which was produced by Phil Collins, by the way.